Ladies and gentlemen, Marvel Contest of Champions mod has been back at it again, and yesterday he managed to, on his magical mod server, which I don't really know anything about, I have no idea how he does this stuff, managed to get both Gwenpool and Cable and show off their abilities and also glance over them in the actual character info section, and that is the main focus of today's video. We're going to have a look at actually what all their abilities do and kind of suss out, which out of Gwenpool and Cable is the better champion, what uses might these champions have in game, and also guys, I'm going to get you to vote. In the description of this video is going to be a straw poll. In January, when these champions are speculated to be released, I'm going to go for one of two of them as a 5-star champion, either Cable or Gwenpool. Now, just to kind of say it here, I think Cable is the much better champion, and I'll explain why as we progress throughout the video, but I want you guys to vote. I want your opinion. Which one do you want me to go for as a 5-star character? But again, with that said, I think Cable might be the much better champion, guys. But I'm going to give my points here and explain, all the cool stuff Gwenpool does, all the cool stuff Cable does, and why, Gwenpool actually has quite a serious disadvantage, whereas Cable, he seems pretty good, like, in tons of spectrums of the game. So we're going to explain all that today. Now, let's go through it, guys. Let's go through the abilities and see what Gwenpool actually does, which is quite a bit different to some of the info that Trukos data mines. So, if we hit play on the video, now, on all attacks, she has a 25% chance to inflict a bleed, dealing 70% of her attack as direct damage over 5 seconds. Now, you're going to see this a lot with Gwenpool, right? She's got so much stuff that relies on bleeds. That's pretty much like all of her mechanics rely on bleed. And the problem is, like with Gwenpool, which I'm going to talk about now, is that's so good. That is amazing when you are fighting a champion that is not bleed immune. But when you're fighting a champion that's bleed immune, she doesn't really have much going for her. Like, half her abilities don't work, and it's gonna kind of suck. And with, like, the, how common champions like Vision and Ultron especially, with how common Ultron is in the game, especially in stuff like Alliance War, I think it's gonna make, Gwenpool a bit of a bad champion for that. Like, I'm just going to say it out front, because she so much relies on being able to bleed the target to actually deal an incredible amount of damage and have all this crazy utility, but when you can't bleed the target, then you're a little bit screwed, whereas, Cable doesn't have a big disadvantage like that. So, yeah, that's kind of the first thing that kind of springs to mind, is that Gwenpool is amazing when she can bleed the target, but when she can't, she, maybe a little bit lacking. Now, once you've got that bleed on the target, so it's a 25% chance, so it's quite statistically likely. I don't know if this bleed stacks. It'll be interesting to see if it does. But if it's quite likely that in a 5-hit combo, you're probably going to get that like all of the time. Well, most of the time you're going to get that bleed apply. And what you can do with a heavy attack, after you've got that bleed in a 5-hit combo, so you do a 5-hit combo, you got the bleed up, you parry, and then you do a heavy attack. So if the target is already bleeding, the attack instead can convert an existing bleed into a bleed that causes 450% of Gwenpool's attack as direct damage over 23 seconds. Which is amazing. That is such an incredibly strong bleed. If we look at like Deadpool's bleed, that's only like 288%, and that is such a ridiculously strong bleed. Same with Captain America. It is over 23 seconds, so it is a little bit of a longer duration, but that is really powerful to kind of have going on in the background. So I think that is really awesome in terms of what you can do in kind of the standard 5-hit combo. But you're only going to want to do that, once in every only makes sense to do that once in every, I don't know, 4 or 5 combos-ish, depending on, how aggressively you're playing. So that's pretty good, but again, when the target's bleed immune, there's nothing going on too far, so far. Also, you get, right at the top here, 3% chance to stun per bleed active on the target, lasting for 0.75 seconds. I don't know how useful that's going to be. Maybe with the mastery that increases stun duration, it might be a little bit more helpful, and it might allow you, if you get it on the last hit or the second to last hit, to actually chain on like another 5 round of combos. So, we're actually going to have to see in game if that's useful enough to be really good. Now, if we scroll down a little bit more, we can see what this special attack 1 does, and that attack incinerates the enemy, dealing 98% of your attacker's energy damage over 14 seconds. This effect also removes perfect block chance and reduces block proficiency by 100% while it's active. So that's actually really, really awesome. That means even when the target's blocking, if you have that debuff up, you're still going to be doing 100% of your damage. Granted, I don't think you can like fully crit and get the extra damage while the target's blocking, but that's really, really powerful that it removes all perfect block and you're doing your regular damage for the most part while blocking. And when that effect expires, if you have a bleed on the target, which, most of the time you probably will, it has a 100% chance to consume that bleed effect and reapply again. That's great. That is really, really good. So there's a lot of stuff, with your bleeds that you can kind of refresh and reapply, and that's one of the things. The second thing on the special attack too is an Innovate. That's it. Yep, I think I said it correctly there. Which prevents the target from gaining any power when struck for 6 seconds. So I just realized actually that's power when struck. So if the target's attacking, then it's a little bit of a different story, but it's kind of like a half power lock, right? If you're playing really well, it pretty much is a power lock. But when that effect expires, it has a 100% chance to consume 1 bleed and reapply itself. So, if you are against a champion that you can bleed, you can just keep on fighting, keep on attacking, and there's a chance, quite a high statistically likelihood, that you can just keep this power lock going and going and going, which is going to be very, very useful in a great range of fights. Again, like against like a target like a classic Vision or an Ultron, like, you're not going to be able to reapply this effect. It's only going to last for 6 seconds. So, she's so reliant on fighting people with bleed to actually be a super dope champion. But let's finally look at the special attack 3, which I guess is slightly redeeming. Like, it's pretty good. So the special attack 3 has a 100% chance to armor break, removing enemy armor and applying 115% armor reduction for 14 seconds. That's really good. That's like 1 stack of Force Armor Break, which is really, really good. And if you have a bleed on the target, it can consume a stack of the bleed and reapply itself. So that is amazing. Again, if the target's bleeding, and if you're playing really, really aggressively, it looks like for a lot of these effects, because they last 14 seconds, that you're just going to be able to keep on reapplying and reapplying them and always keep these like crazy damage buffs and armor reductions up. It might be a little bit difficult to manage, and I think there's definitely a high skill cap to it, but I really like the design of the champion. But again, like the huge con that this champion has is that, a bleed immune target she's not going to be very good against. And also her dupe ability, which is actually quite a good one. Now, it's not actually featured in this video, but her dupe ability is kind of like a mixture of Magnetos and like Black Widow and Star-Lord, so she can't lose more than a certain percentage of health from any special attack hits, which is really, really good. It means she can tank multiple level 3s. And she also reduces defensive ability accuracy based on her current combo count. So that may make her very good for certain things. I think, there's going to be some challenges in Act 5 where this champion seems like she's going to be really, really good for. But again, kind of in like the overall spectrum of the game, having defensive ability accuracy and stuff, I think the fact that she has to build up the reduction based on her current combo meter, and also the fact that, she relies on targets being bleed immune to be really good, is going to make her, like, a bit rubbish for Alliance War, because, again, there are so many Ultrons in Alliance War, and so many Electros, and she just doesn't look like she has... Actually, maybe Electros with a bleed, she slightly has a bit more of an advantage to counter, but in terms of building up that defensive ability accuracy, it's going to be a little bit too slow in comparison to Black Widow. So I still think, overall, like, Black Widow is going to be still the #1 skill champion. But Gwenpool, she might come in at, like, maybe number 2, number 3, but again, it's very reliant on fighting a target that is not bleed immune. Now, let's have a look at Cable, the champion that I'm a little bit more hyped for, because Cable has so much cool stuff that he can do. And to me, I think Cable's going to be I think he's going to be a God Mode champion. He seems amazing for so many aspects of the game, like Alliance Quest, Alliance War. But let's talk... Oh, let's mute that and talk about some of the stuff that he does. So, the first one, which a lot of people were saying this champion's going to be crazy for Suicide Masteries. I personally don't see this, but, this I'll just explain why. So future poison durations are reduced by 20% each time a poison is triggered on Cable. That means, you know, if Cable gets like 5 poisons applied to him, then he's poison immune, which is only really the case when you're, you know, fighting Abomination. If you have like the poison suicide mastery, then yeah, that's cool. It's gonna, like, you have to take 1 less poison before you are poison immune and gain the passive bonus. Once you are poison immune, you gain a passive bonus of 50% damage to special attacks. But again, there aren't really many scenarios aside from fighting Abomination where that's going to be like something that you actually use. And in terms of like the damage you take, well, I guess it's a way to kind of play around it, because also Cable is he can heal every time he gets to a certain power threshold. So I guess with that passive and also that passive and the heal passive, you could maybe use this champion to counter Abomination. So I think that's going to make him pretty solid for Alliance War as well. He's got like a lot of utility and stuff he can do. And also, when caused to bleed, Cable has a 100% chance to trigger his heavy attack degeneration on his opponent. The heavy attack degeneration deals up to 400% of his attack over 15 seconds. However, this is based on the amount of power that the opponent has. So most of the time that number's probably going to be between 0 and 300%. I would assume anyway, because you never really want to get up to the full 400%, because if you do, you're going to take a level 3 and then you're probably going to die. And that only affects something very interesting to bear in mind as well, organic opponents. So that's not going to affect Ultron or Vision, but organic opponents, there are a lot less of them than there are bleed immune opponents. So I guess like that isn't too bad for the most part. That's going to work on, you know, a good 95% of the people that you have in the game. And also, so I think, you know, you're definitely, against most opponents, you're going to want to keep the heavy attack debuff up the most of the time. And let's scroll down. So this is what I think makes Cable really, really OP. So 15% chance to regen 15% health over 10 seconds each time a power threshold is reached. And this ability stops working below 25% health. Now that, to me, seems really, really good. So every time he gains 1 bar of power, he has a 15% chance to regen 15% of his maximum health. Granted, it's nowhere near as powerful as Scarlet Witch, but it seems like a pretty solid option for regeneration, you know, especially with how fast you cycle through power when playing aggressively in combat. Seems like this is quite a sustainable champion. Obviously relies on a little bit of luck as well. I think one thing also to bear in mind about both of these characters is that when he's playing them in this video, they're both rank 1, level 1, so they're not fully ranked up. The numbers and the amount of healing could increase by quite a bit. Same with like Gwenpool's stats and stuff. So that's an interesting thing to bear in mind. You know, that might go up to about 20-25% when this character is like fully maxed out, which is very, very interesting. And also, if you dupe and awaken this character, he gains like an additional like power gain buff. Every time he reaches a threshold of power, he has a chance to gain an additional power gain buff. So again, it's more power, more damage, more healing. Seems really, really good to me. Now, special attack 1, this attack is unblockable if you are currently under the effects of a True Strike buff, which we don't really need to worry about at the moment, but that's interesting to bear in mind. There's certainly some uses that you could have with that. Special attack 2, this attack incinerates the enemy, dealing 100% of your attacker's energy damage over 10 seconds. This effect also removes perfect block and reduces block proficiency by 100% while it's active. So again, really, really strong debuff, similar to Gwenpool's debuff. This one is like 4 seconds, not as long, so it's maybe a little bit weaker in terms of its duration, but it's still like a really, really good thing for a champion to have. And the second thing is that attack has an 84% chance to give the opponent a concussion, reducing their ability accuracy by 78% for 11 seconds, and the potency of this effect is affected by class relationships. So imagine if you're fighting a skill champion, it's more often than not 100%, and maybe when you're fighting like a tech champion, maybe it's a little bit lower, maybe it's 60%. But again, this is an unleveled champion, so that might actually go up to like 100% chance to apply, and maybe something like a 90% chance, 90% ability accuracy reduction. So that's really, really good, especially for fighting champions like Electro. If you can get that off fairly quickly, coupled with the fact, you know, the Cable can heal, I think it's going to make him a pretty solid all-rounder. There seems to be a lot of like utility in ways that you can play Cable to counter, you know, various champions in the game. So yeah, that's something that could definitely come into use for a lot of different scenarios. And the final thing we look at is the special attack free, which has a 100% chance to grant True Strike for 15 seconds, and True Strike allows the champion to ignore any armor, any resistance or evasion, which is exceptionally good for fighting like armor nodes in Alliance War, like a Spider-Man, a Nightcrawler, any champions that are a little bit annoying like that. So True Strike is a really good buff for a champion to have. So combined with the fact that this champion has a heal, he has True Strike on his level 3, which lasts for, you know, a decent amount of time, ability accuracy reduction on his special 2, and also a pretty strong degeneration buff on his heavy attacks. I think overall, in terms of like what he could be used for, you know, he seems pretty solid for Alliance War, Alliance Quest on paper. I feel like what he can be used for is a lot wider, and he has a lot more uses in the game than Gwenpool has, because Genji's very limited on the fact that she can't heal, and also the fact that she relies on fighting targets that can be that can bleed. So overall, I think Cable's a little bit of a better character, but I'm very interested to get your thoughts and opinions. Again, this is kind of a very early speculation on both of the characters and their uses in the game, but I'm very interested to see what you guys think. If you spotted anything about the characters that may, you know, make Gwenpool a little bit better than Cable. They both have amazing animations, and I'll link to the MCOC mod videos in the description below, guys, if you want to check out the videos of the fighting and the combat and stuff. I didn't want to directly rate the videos, so yeah, you can check out all the animations and stuff, but trust me, they are both like so amazing. I love Gwenpool's animations and Cable's. Gwenpools are like really funny and comical, but Cables are just straight badass. They are so cool. So anyway, let me know what you think of both the champions in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this quick comparison video, which actually wasn't that quick because it was about 16 minutes. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, guys, feel free to leave a thumbs up. Apart from that, take care and have an absolutely fantastic day.